Welcome back to another video, and it's an install video, but it's also got a Sigenergy Sigenstor battery. Now, previously we've reviewed one of these, but we've never filmed one being installed, and that's what today is all about. Now, this system is pretty small, but it's got some pretty impressive forecasted savings. How are we going to achieve that? We're going to find out. We're going to take you through the install, and we're going to show you why Sigen are changing our mindset when it comes to our battery installations. Let's go and find out.
Feeling a light to breeze, the sun it shines and all you see is squint trying to look at me, but can I use your light to please?
If I had a script, it'd be a lot easier, wouldn't it? You know, can you tell them? But then, if you get it wrong though, people online are like, "Whoa,
oh, no, yeah.
How dare you?"
You know that we
Yeah.
could be eyes wide bright like time flies, feels right. You know that it would be nice, you know that we could be.
So what actually happens on a solar install? Well, they're all different, but on this one, we've got a pretty big list. We're gonna have to get those panels on the roof. We've got to get the mounting system on, we've got to get the hooks in, mount the panels, and once we've done that, we've got to get DC cable off that roof to our inverter location. So with all that done, we're then gonna have to install the battery. So we've got battery modules, we've got an inverter, but on this job, we've also got a gateway, an off-grid device to take this home off-grid, so we're going to have to install that. Also, because this is going to be an off-grid system, when we've lost power, we've also lost our route to earth if we have a fault. So we're going to have to put a big earth rod in the ground to protect us in the event of a fault. And with all that done, we can activate the system, start generating power, and save this customer some money. So this is actually a 2-day job. Yesterday, the roofers arrived, and the roofer's job was to get the panels installed on the roof. Now, to do this, they had to fit some hooks. This is actually a pan tile roof, which is pretty straightforward, but it is a different mounting system. So what the guys would have done is push those tiles up, found the rafters, secured the hooks, took off any material that they could, bring the tile back down, and then they mount the rails. Once the rails are on, we can start to install the panels, then we trim it all up, put end caps on, make sure it's all level, bolt it all down, and it's now ready for the electricians to come and do all of the connections.
Now, before we can move on with the rest of the day, there was one issue that happened on the first day with the bird proofing. As we got to the end of the install and the bird proofing was going on, I think the guys realized that something was wrong. We'd sent the company the wrong length of bird proofing. The guys on site, they hadn't worked with this type before. You know, they just decided to power through, use the bird proofing, trying to make it work. And I don't think they really understood what the issue is. So at about 1:30, Ben, because he wasn't there that day, gets a message from me with a single word, Lamau, and these two images, and you can see there's a bit of an issue. We were there watching him trying to clip these units onto the panels and just like bending the metal, demolishing the wire, and as you can see, the final product, I call this the krill catcher, but he just kept going. He just kept trying. Eventually, obviously, we realized this is probably not the way these are supposed to look, and they're not. And we got it all sorted, we got them replaced, and everyone was paid for their time, so it's all good. It's just very, very funny.
And that brings us to today, because we've got to get this battery installed, we've got to get this gateway on, we've got to get this system live. So let's go and check out that battery. So the battery install is coming on, and what we thought we'd do now is give you a bit of a walk around of this job and tell you where everything's going to go. So battery is in, we're going to floor mount this one. We've got a module, an inverter, and we've got that gateway. Now the gateway could go outside, but we're actually going to put the gateway internally on this one. It's a client request. This room, they want to have the gateway, the batteries, and all the gubbins in one place. Now, it's not going to be too difficult to do, because at the back of this wall is So that is the back of that wall where the battery is. Now, we could have the gateway outside here, like I said, but we're going to put it inside. So what we've got to do is get the supply cables from off that service head there into the property to mount that gateway. Now, this is all local, so it's nice and easy to do. There's a maximum length you can have on the tails going from the service head, from the meter, to the gateway. Beyond a certain distance, you would have to fuse them down. Because it's so close, we don't need to do that. And we're going to run it in some trunking, go through the cavity and get into that gateway. And with our main supply being pretty much back to back of the location of the battery and the Sigen gateway, it was looking pretty good, and I was confident we were going to get this install knocked off in no time. On the subject of gateways, why don't we take a look at this Sigen unit and see what it has to offer. So gateway is here, which is this product. Now, this is actually pretty big. It's bigger than the Tesla unit. I would say it's about 20% bigger, and it's different in a few ways. One of them is the connections on this are on the bottom via these stuffing glands. So on a Tesla, it comes like a bare unit and you can decide where you want the connections to come from. You can turn the gubbins upside down. You can have top entry, you can have back entry. But on this, they're always going to go in the bottom. So you've got some connections here. We've got comms, that is the communication from the inverter to the gateway to say, hey, we've gone off grid, activate the inverter. We've got our grid connection and we've got our backup connection. So where the power comes in from the street, you'll get a live and a neutral. They normally go straight into the fuse and then straight into the house. What's going to happen now is they're going to be intercepted by this unit. So they're going to come in here first, be linked up inside and go back out to that fuse board. And if we have a grid event or if we want to go off grid, we can activate it. And that essentially cuts the link between the grid and the house and activates the battery to be the grid. We've then got options to have other inverters, because you can have multiple inverters on one gateway. I think you can have 2 inverters on this, and you've got your smart port. We're going to come back to the smart port later on. So this is the inside of the Sig gateway. Now this is the single phase gateway. They do a 3-phase version. I think there's 2 versions of the 3-phase version, but there's 1 version of the single phase. This is the single phase. Turns out you can have 3 inverters, not 2. So you could have 3 blocks of inverters. The reason you have multiple inverters would be you can only have 6 modules, 6 battery modules per 1 Sigenstor energy manager. So if you want more storage than 48 kilowatt hours, then you would have to have a second inverter or a third. Also, if you have one of the DC car chargers, you have to lose one of the battery modules. So if you had 6 batteries, you'd have to take one out, have 5, and the DC charger. So that's why sometimes people have, like big properties, multiple inverters. I've just took this protective cover off the actual gateway so you can see what is inside. You've got 2 DIN rails that are holding breakers, and then everything is connected with these buzz bars. So there's no cables as such, there's more buzz bar than there is cable, and what that means is you get a solid connection, and these are all linked in the proper places. These are your breakers. This is your KM1 and your KM2. We've got our grid and our smart port, and then all of the comms and all of the brains of the unit are housed up here at the top. And at the bottom, we've got those cable entries. Like I said, this is a little bit different to the Tesla. You can't rear cable entry this product. It has to come in on the bottom. Also, when you close this, you put it down, you close it on the front there, you push it, and it does come with a lock. So if you've got it outside and you don't want someone messing around turning your home's power off, you can lock that gateway to stop them accessing it.
It's that.
Is it on? There's Oasis reunion, yeah?
Now that you've got a bit of info about the job, it's time to start actually installing, and the first thing on our mind is that earth rod that needs to be in place before we can even think about taking this customer off grid. That's what's going on right here now. The plan to try and get this away from the property but keep it reasonable distance is we're going to run it from the gateway, down this wall, across this boundary. This resin here, this brushing grout is going to get dug out. We're going to run that cable across, and we're going to put the actual earth rod in the ground here. Once the earth rod is in the ground, you do a test to make sure you've got a good enough earth, and if you've not got a good enough earth there, you need to move it or go deeper or whatever. Once you've got that earth, you've tested it, you put a cap on top, and then when we go off grid, we get live, we get neutral, and we get our earth back as well. So because obviously the danger here is that you can't just drill down and pray.
No, exactly. Yeah, we literally just get the spade out, keep digging until you keep going as far as you can, pretty much, and then.
How do you know where to dig? Like when you're, so if you're like, where do you think? Do you look at the ground and go,
Yeah,
there's going to be a good earth there?
That's what it's sort of common knowledge. Try and just find where it's like soily.
Yeah.
So you don't want to go close to that wall because of foundations and stuff.
Yeah.
As soon as you try and put a rod in, you'll just hit the foundations and
So
you'll never go anywhere.
So you'll dig down, make sure there's nothing in the way, and then you knock that rod in,
Yeah.
and then you've got to test it. And then is it less than 100?
Yeah, it matters. Some people ask for different specifics. We'll always put 2 earth rods in and then go from there.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. Right.
We know with 2 earth rods,
You're going to be protected.
yeah, the last thing you want to do is put 1 in. You're knackered.
Yeah. And do you ever bury it, test it, and then it's not good enough?
Never. It's never happened.
Oh, is it not?
No.
Okay. No. So you're always going to get it first time?
Yeah, we always test it. Cause
Well, we'll film you live later on then when you test it, and then this could be the first one, couldn't it?
we'll put 2 in it. It'll be about 400 ohms. So.
Yeah. That's deep enough, isn't it? Give it here. What are we going to do then? You got a lump hammer?
Hammer, yeah. That's how we used to do it before we got these little bits.
I can't believe, how embarrassing for Hilty. They should be ashamed of themselves. Anyway, no pressure, there's only 4 people watching.
Yeah, with cameras.
So what I've got a Hilty T56. The big, massive breaker.
You've got it on you?
No. It's just... Oh, look at that. It's got it!
Well, would you look at that? A quick change of the settings and that earth rod was drilled in faster than a spotted buck in a Renaissance fair. Now, the boys then had the issue of getting the drill bit unscrewed from the rod.
Can you get that bit off there now, though? Is that well and truly jammed on?
That's what I said to them, they might do the threading. Obviously it's twist the way it threads so it's dead tight.
Yeah.
But they can deal with that themselves. For now, why don't we take a look at the specs of this mighty fine system.
So these are the panels, and for a change we are low down. We're not 2-3 stories up, we've got a nice single story scaffold, so we feel super safe. But these are on and wired up, so there's 10 of them. There's 2 main arrays. There's this like triangle here at the top of the roof, and then there's 2 panels down here. And there is room for expansion in the future. We've got a bit of a space there on the left-hand side. If the customer wants more power, then we can string more panels in at a later date when we've left that space. Now, just to give you an overview of the specs of this system, I've got the actual proposal that if you ordered a system from Heatable, you'd have a designer. So the designer on this job has worked with the client and they've said, right, what's your energy usage? What are you paying for energy? What are you trying to achieve out of your system? And then what that designer will do is propose various solutions. So in this instance, we've settled on this spec, and the specification is it's 10 panels, 450 watt bifacial. It's the REA Fusion 2s. Now that gives you a theoretical maximum power of 4.5 kilowatt. Now that maximum power is when the system is working in the absolute perfect conditions. And you'll see this regularly on systems and it can be quite confusing because 4.5 kilowatt peak doesn't mean it will produce 4.5 kilowatts all the time. Where these panels do really well is they are super high performance. So you've got a much better chance of achieving that maximum speed, that maximum power when you go for the REA Fusion 2. Now, panels produce energy in DC. We need to convert that to AC and we need to store some of that energy in DC in the battery, which is why we have a Sigenergy Sigenstor hybrid battery system. So these panels produce that DC current and it will come off the roof in 2 strings. That power will drop straight down and it will go to the inverter. And what that hybrid Sigenergy inverter will do, which is really smart, is it will allow DC current to drop straight through into the battery cells with no need for conversion. When you convert energy from DC to AC, you'll lose some of that energy in that process. So this system will allow it to drop straight through and be stored. If we need it, the inverter will then suck that power out of the batteries, take that power off the roof, convert the amount we need for AC and provide it to our home. So that was our panels, our panel power, our solar power. This is that inverter. Now this is the 6 kilowatt single phase version of the Sigenstor. There's various options you can have. You can have a 3.6, then you can have a 5, a 6, a 7, 8, a 10, a 12 kilowatt version, but we've gone for the 6 here and we've mated that to 2 8 kilowatt hour battery cells. So with Sigenstor, it's pretty cool because you mix and match the battery cells. You can have 5s or you can have 8s. And later on in the year, they're also bringing out a 10 kilowatt hour module. But you can mix and match those. So to expand this system, it's pretty straightforward. What we're doing now is just moving this trunking up. Now, the reason that we're going to put this trunking slightly higher than it was originally is we've just been speaking to the client and the client may in the future expand this system. We do have a physical limit because we're going to have a gateway internally above that, so we can't go any higher. We don't really have any space to the side. So this will be the maximum capacity that we could have in this location for this battery system. With the gateway mounted and everything secured in place, the lads could finally start preparing the outside main supply for the cable run that would connect everything together. And around this time, we also managed to get that drill bit detached from the earth rod.
Is it coming off? Oh shit, what's that? What's that?
It's summer all the time with you, you make me feel alright. All swings and water slides and summery and pretty high. I'd like to watch the tide come in and then go out at night with you. You know that we could be, you know that we could be. Eyes wide, bright light, time flies, feels right. You know that it'd be nice, you know that we could.
So how would you actually go about installing a Sigenstor battery or any other battery for that matter? Well, there are some similarities, but there are also some differences. This is premium kit. Now, you've got various options when it comes to the Sigenstor. This is the ground mount. Now, you can have 2 battery modules and 1 inverter wall mounted. That's the maximum weight limit. Anything above that, you need the floor mount. The reason we've put the floor mount on this job is for future expansion, because if the customer wants to expand the system in the future, if it's wall mounted, it's not going to take the weight. This is a modular system. It is really easy to install from a building perspective. You don't have to make off any cables. They are click connections on each of these modules. And when it comes to expanding it, it also makes it super simple. Now it's got adjustable feet, so what we will do is put it on the ground, level it up, adjust the feet and get it almost perfect. It might change when we put those modules on.
Ooh, hold on, internal temperature too high. It's okay, so the camera's overheated. Brace.
You're taking over.
Carry on!
Floor mount. So the floor mount goes in and we get it roughly level. We've got these adjustable feet. And on the subject of battery modules, they are super heavy. So these are, I don't actually know what they are. They're probably about 40 kilograms. They're pretty awkward to handle, but Sigen give you these handles, and not all manufacturers do this. These are really handy. They've got a little lock there that sits on the back. You plug it on the side of the module, and it gives you a handle to drop it onto that floor mount. Now, you can have up to 6 modules on this battery, plus the energy controller, which is the inverter. And then they are secured together with little brackets. Can't find any, but essentially they screwed the 2 modules together to keep it secure. Once you've put your battery storage in, you then drop the energy controller on, and it's much the same as the batteries. It just drops on the top, and then there's brackets that secure it to the wall, because obviously you don't want this tipping over, even though you would have a job. It is super heavy. So with that all fixed to the wall, we're then going to move on to the wiring connections. Now when it comes to wiring up these panels, we've got DC current, and therefore we need a specific DC cable. Now one of the challenges with a DC cable, or a DC system rather, is that adding multiple panels together increases the voltage every time you do it, because you're wiring it in series. Now, There is a minimum amount of panels that you need to kick on the inverter, but you can also have too many. Part of the design process at Heatable is that we will design it so it all meets the minimum and the maximum specifications, and we also design the size of the cable. Now, when you've got lots of voltage, you've got polarity and you've got no earth, there is a risk of arcing. If you have a DC system installed properly, it's properly wired and it's properly contained, you'll never have a problem. You only have a problem when you get poor connections or people have done a cheap job and have left cables maybe rubbing over time against a tile like this. It starts to wear away at the cable. If that ever got through the cable and the positive and the negative touched, we're going to get a pretty big bang and possibly even a fire. Now, the way to mitigate this is obviously to install it properly. Don't have cables rubbing against sharp edges, use containment, and make sure that when you make off your connections, you do it properly with approved products. If you wanted to go a step further as a customer and you just want total peace of mind, then opt for microinverters, because microinverters convert DC locally, there's no high voltage, and in the event of a problem, they will shut down immediately. Now, when it comes to battery locations, you've got loads of choices. In this property, we've gone for the gateway inside and the battery inside because it all makes sense and the customer wants it inside his house. That's totally cool. But what if you wanted it somewhere else? The limiting factor for the gateway is the proximity to the incoming supply. Really, you want to try and keep the tails, this is going to be the power from the grid coming in, to the gateway, it's going back out to the fuse board. We want to try and keep this under 3 meters. Distances above 3 meters, we might have to fuse it down. So we try and keep it as close as we can. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've got to keep the battery near the gateway. That can be like 40, 50 meters away, but obviously it's going to cost more because you're going to have bigger gauge cables going from the gateway to the battery. Now, on this job, it makes sense to put it all in here and the customer wants it in this room. But where else could we put it if you wanted it elsewhere? Well, the gateway could go on that wall, or it could go on the outside wall, and the battery could go here, or both of these could be on the outside wall here as well. Now, we could have the gateway there, we could have it inside, we could have the battery here. Maybe we want the battery out of sight. We've got a garage over there. All we've got to do is get some power cables under these slabs along this gravel, and we've got some outside space here next to the garage. It's pretty covered over and that would work quite nicely. We could take it inside the garage if we wanted to. So your options aren't limited to having it all right next to the meter. The only consideration is the gateway. It is going to cost more though to put your battery at the other end of your garden and have your gateway on your property, because you've got cable costs, you've got labour. So sometimes if you're happy to have it all local, keep it nice and affordable. So we are making excellent progress on this install. We've got the panels on the roof and they are wired. We've got that earth rod in, we've got the gateway mounted, we've got the battery installed. All that's left now, we have got to get the power from the incoming supply into that gateway and back out to that consumer unit. Once we've done that, we're going to connect the gateway to the battery with AC power. We're going to make off the DC connections from the solar panels. And once that's all done, we're into testing. Once we've done dead tests, we'll move on to live tests, and then once it's live, we can commission the system. Now, this is super easy on the Sigenster range of products. You essentially connect to the gateway, you connect to the inverter, you give it some settings, you activate it, and it goes into full automation mode. The customer then can take that to the next level. They can enter their tariff details. If they're changing tariff, they can put a smart tariff in, and they can choose the work mode. So leave it in like full AI. I want you to energy trade. I want you to prioritize this. I want you to prioritize that. Or you can just say, do it all for me. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see what the customer decides to do on this one. So I reckon we'll be wrapped up here, and then it's time to check out how the system is performing. We're back in the studio after what was a pretty intense install. Now, this right now is like 35 days since that install, and we've left it 35 days because we wanted to look at some of the data from the system. How is it actually performed? What we have had here in the UK is pretty much every season. We've had blistering heat, we've had tropical storms, we've had pretty cold weather, and today, miserable weather. It is pouring down, grey skies, but all this is really good data because what it's going to show you is how systems actually perform in what is a UK climate. Pretty unpredictable, generally miserable. This here is Sigenstor's back end. This is like the engineer login. So as a customer, you may have a similar sort of screen, but it would be a little bit different to this. What we're going to look at is some key headline statistics. Now, we've had 35 days of full generation, but let's just start with what's going on right now. So this is the actual schematic of the home, and if you have solar, most apps look like this, and I'll give you a bit of an overview of how they work. So you've got a picture of a house, pretty self-explanatory. You've got a solar array on the roof. So right now it is doing 3.4 kilowatts of real-time generation. That is instantaneous power generation measured in kilowatts. That's 3,400 watt, 3.4 kilowatts. It's just dropped to 1.6 because if you look at the top left-hand side, it's currently raining, and I mean it is super miserable where we are now. Next to that, we've got our home load. Now, right now we're doing 0.3 kilowatt. That's what we're consuming in the property, so 300 watt. For reference, your average property in the UK sort of background energy consumption is about 200 or 300 watts. That's pretty much what we'd expect. Next, we have our battery system, and there's three things to look at. One of them is the percentage of charge. So right now it's 83%. We're going to come back to that in a second. We've got what's going on with the battery. So we're in charge mode and we're charging at 0.9 kilowatt, and we have nothing coming from the grid. Now, this could look different under different circumstances. Okay, now what we're going to do is look at the headline figures for the lifetime performance of this system, so 35 days. And we can do that by rolling down here, and we get to these numbers. So since launch, the system has produced 661.52 kilowatt hours of solar generation. Now, that is really impressive because a couple of considerations here. It's not the perfect position, i.e. it's not due south, the roof. We've also got 10 panels, so it was a pretty small system, but to have done that much energy in 35 days, that's about 19 kilowatt hours per day from just 10 panels. Now, of that 661 kilowatt hours, we've used 404. Now, that's either been consumed in the property or it's been sent to the battery to charge the actual battery, and the balance that we didn't use, 257 kilowatt hours, has been sold to the grid. Now, all these kilowatts do equal cash, but how do we work out how much cash we have actually saved? Well, we can look at a couple of different things. We need to look at the load we actually had in the property, because that's what we would have bought from the grid. Then we can look at how much solar we produced, how much we exported, and we can get to those figures. I'm going to show you how to do it right now because it is pretty simple. So the first one to look at here is if we hadn't done anything, if we didn't have solar, the house would have consumed 371.77 kilowatt hours. So 371.77, and if we times that by the current energy rate they're paying, which is 0.28, £104 is what they would have paid for energy in that 35-day period. Remember that. We'll call it 105, make it easy. The next thing to look at is how much energy came from solar and how much we had in export. So we'll deal with export first. So in that period, 257 kilowatt hours went out to the grid. This customer's getting 15 pence for export because they're on Octopus Go. So £38.55 income. So we would have spent 105. So far we've had 38.55 just from export. Now in that period, like I said, we had 661 kilowatt hours of solar production, but solar is instantaneous. Like we saw before, we're producing like 3 kilowatt, the home was using nothing, the battery was pretty much full. We've got some going to the grid, that's where our export payments come from, but there's going to be moments when the battery's not full, the battery's taking some of that solar. So a quick way to work it out is how much energy in the same period did we actually buy from the grid, and we have that figure here, 70.99 or 71 kilowatt hours. Now what I did check earlier on is how much of that energy was used to do overnight charging, and it was pretty much all of it. So if we do 71 kilowatt hours times the overnight charge rate, again on Octopus Go, this is 8 pence, so 0.08. So we paid £5.68 from the grid, but we had £38 back in export money, so our bill was negative 32. We're £32 into the red, and the difference between what we were paying for energy and where we are today is £32 at 105. We're £137 per month better off, and we have no energy bill right now for this property. So that is a pretty impressive result for a 10 panel system, 16 kilowatt hours of battery. Now, what is helping this system, like we said earlier on in the video, the battery system. It sort of transforms the way that systems work today, because energy is produced in real time, and if you can't consume it in that moment, it's going to go to the grid and you're going to get paid export. Well, you are better off to have a battery sized appropriately that consumes that energy, stores it, and then deploys it into the home when you need it later on. The other benefit of that battery is what this customer is doing here, is they are charging it at night on that cheap overnight tariff. That's giving them access to energy at sort of 7-8 pence, and then they're just exporting all day at 15p. So they are using the system to their advantage, they're playing the system, and they're earning cash along the way. Now, all the heavy lifting really is done by Sigenergy's automatic AI integration. This system automates the whole process for you. You don't have to be manually making adjustments, managing export, managing import. You can just leave it in AI mode and it will do all of this for you. Now, winter is going to look different because we're not going to have as much solar generation as we are in summer, but this is an annualized deal. The goal here is to build up credit in your energy account across summer, spring, even autumn, get into a positive cash position, and then in winter you are going to need the grid because you're not going to have as much generation. You can still charge your battery at night, so we can access that cheap energy for 7 pence when we normally would have bought it for like 28p, and we're still going to get some export. It's not going to be as high performance as it is in summer, but annualized they're still going to be in the black with this system. And where it really does count in winter is having panels that perform when it's miserable, like today, because that system, even though it's cloudy, it's raining, it's horrible today, it is still producing a decent amount of energy, more than enough than their home load. They're actually charging the battery from the grid. Now, if you want to get a quote for a system like this, all you need to do is head over to the Heatable website, book a design call with one of our expert designers who will be able to put you together a package that works for you. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like, and are you subscribed to this channel? Because we do loads of content. We've got a brand new studio with lots of lights. We spent loads of money on it, and we need subscribers to keep coming so we get funding to keep the channel going. So please subscribe. If you've liked it, give it a like, and if you want a quote, you know where to go.
Classic!
Yeah?